6:48 in the morning. The meter is already in your hand before you're fully awake. You know the drill. You did everything right yesterday. Dinner was clean, medication on time, you even walked a little after you ate. And the number comes back at 154, at 167, at wherever it seems to park itself no matter what you do the day before. You sit on the edge of the bed and you think, what is the point? I've had that thought, sitting in exactly that position in exactly that silence. And what I eventually discovered was that the problem wasn't what I was doing during the day, it was what I wasn't doing in the 2 hours before I closed my eyes. There is one specific food, one I now eat every single night before bed, that changed what my liver does between midnight and 6 in the morning. It costs almost nothing, it's in every grocery store, and it took me years to connect it to that number because nobody ever explained the mechanism. I'm going to explain it today. Stay with me all the way through because the mechanism is the part that makes this stick. I'm 83 years old. I get up off the floor without help. I drive myself to appointments. I think clearly, I sleep through the night, and I wake up to a morning number that no longer makes me want to throw the meter across the room. Not because I'm lucky, because I stopped ignoring the hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and started treating them as the most important window of the day. Before I go any further, drop your fasting number in the comments right now. Just the number. If you're on metformin or insulin, add yes. I read every comment on this channel, and what I'm covering today is going to land differently depending on where your number is sitting. Now let me show you what's actually happening while you sleep. Most people believe their morning blood sugar is determined by what they ate for dinner. That's a reasonable assumption. It is also only part of the truth. The less comfortable part is this. Your liver does not sleep when you do. Between roughly 2 and 4 in the morning, a set of hormones begins to rise in your body. Their job is to prepare you for waking, to raise your energy, sharpen your alertness, get your system ready to move. As part of that process, they signal your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. This is not a malfunction, it is a built-in biological clock. It happens in everyone, every night, whether you have diabetes or not. But here is where it goes wrong after 60 with insulin resistance. In a younger body, that liver release is modest. Insulin responds quickly. The glucose gets absorbed by the cells and the blood sugar stays stable. In an older body, where insulin sensitivity has declined, where decades of elevated glucose have made the cells less responsive to insulin's signal, that same liver release hits a system that can't absorb it efficiently. The glucose accumulates. It sits in the blood for hours. And when your alarm goes off and you press the meter to your finger, you are reading the result of a process that started at 2 in the morning, long before breakfast. This is what researchers call the dawn phenomenon, and it is why people with blood sugar challenges can have a perfect dinner, take their medication faithfully, and still wake up to a number that feels like a punishment for something they didn't do. Your morning number is not entirely your fault. It is partly the result of a biological mechanism that your medication was only partially designed to address. Metformin works primarily on your liver during the overnight hours. It puts a partial brake on that glucose release. But partial is the word. And what most people never learn, because there are 12 patients in the waiting room and 8 minutes on the clock, is that there are specific foods that work alongside that mechanism, not against it, to help the liver release less glucose into an already stressed system. One of them is the food I'm going to show you, and the reason it works is something almost nobody connects to blood sugar at all. You do everything right. You eat clean, you take your pills, and the next morning that number is still too high. I know that frustration. I lived it for years. They never tell you about the morning rise, your sugar climbing while you sleep, no matter what you did the day before. You wake up, you test, and it feels like the work didn't count, like you're stuck depending on more and getting nowhere. I was done feeling powerless. I didn't want to throw out my doctor's plan. I wanted something natural and simple I could add to it, something that finally moved that morning number. I'll walk you through what changed it for me, and the natural support I add every day is in the free presentation linked below. Food is cottage cheese. Specifically, a cup of full-fat cottage cheese eaten within an hour of going to bed. Here's why this matters for your morning number. Cottage cheese is one of the highest natural sources of casein protein available. Casein is what researchers call a slow-release protein. Unlike the protein in eggs or chicken, which your body digests and absorbs quickly, casein forms a gel-like structure in your stomach that breaks down gradually over 4 to 6 hours. Studies have documented that casein protein consumed before sleep releases amino acids steadily into the bloodstream across the entire overnight window, the same window when your liver is running its glucose release cycle. Why does a slow protein release affect what the liver does at 3 in the morning? Because one of the signals that triggers more aggressive hepatic glucose production, more liver dumping, is an empty fuel tank. When your body senses that amino acid levels are dropping and no food is coming, it interprets that as a fasting state. And in a fasting state, the liver compensates. It releases more glucose to keep the system running. Casein protein, absorbed slowly across those overnight hours, keeps your system in a gently fed state. It doesn't spike your blood sugar when you eat it. The glycemic impact of cottage cheese is low. But it keeps amino acids available through the night, which research suggests may reduce the liver's urgency to compensate with excess glucose production. This is not a cure. This is a support, one that works alongside your doctor's treatment plan, not instead of it. Talk with your doctor before you change anything about your nighttime routine, especially if you're adjusting meals around medication timing. 1 cup, full fat, within an hour of sleep. Plain or with a small amount of cinnamon if you want the flavor. No sweetener, no fruit, no crackers alongside it. The protein is the mechanism, and you want nothing interfering with the slow absorption. Now here's what I've learned from paying attention to this for years. The cottage cheese works better, noticeably better, when it's part of a system rather than an isolated habit. There are 2 other pieces that work with it, and when all 3 run together, they address the morning number from 3 different directions simultaneously. The second piece is movement after dinner. Not exercise, not a workout. 10 minutes of walking after your evening meal, around your living room, around the block, anywhere. Research describes a glucose clearance mechanism in your muscle tissue that activates the moment you begin moving. This mechanism operates independently of insulin. It doesn't need your pancreas to cooperate, and it doesn't care about your insulin resistance. It pulls glucose out of your bloodstream directly into your muscles, activated purely by movement. What that means for your morning number is that you arrive at the overnight window, when the liver starts its release cycle, with less glucose already circulating. You're starting from a lower baseline, which means the liver release, even if it runs hard, lands on a cleaner system. The third piece is protein first at breakfast. Studies indicate that eating protein is the first thing your stomach processes in the morning, before any carbohydrate reaches your small intestine, triggers a hormone your body produces naturally. That hormone slows how fast glucose from the rest of your meal enters your blood. It also signals the pancreas to prepare an insulin response and quiets the signal that tells your liver to keep releasing stored glucose. The most expensive new diabetes medications on the market were designed to mimic this hormone synthetically. Your body makes it for free when you eat 2 eggs or a cup of Greek yogurt before your first piece of toast. 3 pieces. Cottage cheese before bed. 10 minutes of movement after dinner. Protein first in the morning. Each one targets a different part of the overnight glucose cycle, and the effect of running all 3 together is different from any one of them on its own. At 83, I garden in the morning. I cook real meals. I go to my daughter's house on Sundays, and I'm not the one who needs help getting out of the chair. The overnight system I built didn't hand me that. Years of showing up for my own body handed me that. But the overnight system is what made the showing up worth something. Let me tell you about Gloria. 76 years old, retired postal worker from Ohio. 14 years managing type 2. She'd been waking up to numbers between 162 and 188 for the better part of 2 years, despite clean dinners, despite medication, despite everything her doctor had told her to do. What nobody had told Gloria was that she was going to bed in a state her body read as a long fast. Amino acids dropping, liver preparing to compensate, glucose accumulating while she slept. She added the cottage cheese before bed, the 10-minute walk after dinner, and the protein-first breakfast, always in conversation with her doctor, always monitoring her numbers. And she had an appointment 6 weeks later where her doctor asked her, genuinely puzzled, what had changed. Gloria told him. He didn't have a complete physiological explanation for the effect, but he didn't argue with the numbers either. I'm not sharing Gloria's story as clinical proof. I'm sharing it because it reflects a pattern I've watched repeat itself in people who started taking the overnight hours seriously instead of assuming the medication would handle everything on its own. Here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. Think about how many mornings you have spent doing everything right and still waking up to a number that felt like an accusation. Think about the exhaustion of that, the quiet frustration of following every instruction and still feeling like your own body is working against you. That feeling is not weakness. It is the result of not having the full picture. Nobody handed you the overnight piece. Nobody had time. And so you kept managing the parts you could see, the dinner, the medication, the daytime walk, while the hours between midnight and 6 ran their own program, unmanaged, unaddressed. That window is addressable. It responds to the right support, and you are not too far along in this for it to matter. Research suggests the body retains the ability to respond to these kinds of inputs well into older age. The window hasn't closed. You just didn't have the key. Here, if you watched this whole thing, you're not the type who gives up. You're the type who keeps looking for a real answer. So let me be straight with you. The morning number isn't your fault, and it isn't just diabetes. It's the dawn rise, and it responds to the right daily habits. The goal was never to quit your treatment. It was to support it naturally so you finally see that number move and feel in control again. Alongside the steps I showed you, I take a simple, natural support every day to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range. Affordable, easy, and it works with my doctor's plan, not against it. The free presentation is in the description below. Go see it for yourself. And keep your doctor in the loop. This is support, not a replacement. Here's where to start. Tonight, before you go to sleep, eat 1 cup of full-fat cottage cheese, plain, no sweetener. After dinner this week, set a 10-minute timer and walk. Tomorrow morning, eat your protein before anything else. 2 eggs, Greek yogurt, anything with at least 20 grams before your first carbohydrate. That is the system. 3 pieces, starting tonight. Everything I've shared today is based on research I've followed for decades and on paying close attention to my own body. It is not personal medical advice. Your body, your medications, your specific health picture are different from mine, and any change to your nighttime routine, especially around medication timing, should be discussed with your doctor first. That is not a caution, that is the right starting point. If this is the kind of content that's been missing from your life, subscribe, and drop your fasting number in the comments. Just the number. I read every one.